My grandmother lived with us for 3 years. The woman who raised 5 children, ran a household, and never asked anyone for help, became someone we pitied. And she knew it. If you're over 60 and your children keep suggesting you move in for your own good, or if you're already living with them and something feels off, this isn't easy to hear, but you need to. This channel speaks truths our generation whispers but won't say out loud. If you value your dignity more than convenience, subscribe. In the next 15 minutes, I'll share 6 uncomfortable truths about multi-generational living that nobody talks about at Sunday dinner. Why love and compatibility aren't the same thing, the invisible cost of being the helpful grandparent. What happens to your identity when you become the house guest? And one truth about adult children that even the good ones won't admit. The 6th truth is the hardest, but it's the one that might preserve your most important relationships. Truth 1. The first truth nobody mentions is that the moment you move into their home, the power dynamic shifts, and it never shifts back. You raised them, you made the rules, you decided when dinner was served, what temperature the house should be, and whether the TV stayed on during meals. But in their house, you're now the guest who stays too long. They'll ask you to keep your voice down during their work calls, to not rearrange the kitchen because they can't find anything, to check before inviting your bridge club over because they have plans. And here's what breaks hearts quietly. You'll start asking permission for things you haven't asked permission for in 60 years. My grandmother once said, "The day I have to ask to turn on the TV in the afternoon is the day I've stopped being myself." She said it laughing, but I saw her eyes, and they weren't laughing at all. You might not notice it the first month. The excitement of being together, of family dinners every night, of helping with the grandchildren, all of that masks what's happening underneath. But watch how you start phrasing things after 6 months. Is it okay if I make tea? Would you mind if I sat in the living room? I don't want to be a bother, but could I have friends over on Thursday? These aren't the words of someone living in their home. These are the words of someone living in someone else's home. And you can tell yourself it's just being considerate, being respectful of their space, not wanting to overstep. But here's the truth. You're not being considerate. You're asking permission to exist comfortably. There's a difference between being thoughtful and being diminished. And that line gets crossed the moment you stop making decisions about your own day without checking with someone else first. I watched my grandmother, a woman who organized church fundraisers and managed a farm, start asking my mother if she could take a nap in the afternoon. A nap in the middle of the day, as if rest required approval. And the worst part? She didn't even realize she was doing it. The shift happens so gradually that you don't notice you've stopped being the matriarch and started being the responsibility. You don't notice until one day you realize you've been sitting in your room for 3 hours because you didn't want to interrupt their family time. Their family time. As if you're not family. As if you're a guest who's overstayed their welcome at a party that never ends. This is what happens when you trade independence for proximity. You think you're gaining closeness, but you're actually losing authority. And authority isn't about being bossy or controlling. It's about having dominion over your own life, your own choices, your own daily existence. It's about not having to justify why you want to rearrange your own furniture or paint your own walls or stay up past midnight reading if that's what brings you joy. Truth 2. The second truth is one that makes everyone uncomfortable, but it's reality. Even in large homes, 3 generations under one roof means someone's marriage is living under surveillance. And usually it's your children's marriage that suffers. Young couples need privacy, not just physical privacy behind closed doors, but emotional privacy. They need to argue about money at 11 at night without worrying that you can hear them through the walls. They need to be intimate when the mood strikes, not just on scheduled date nights when you're conveniently out of the house. They need to walk around their own home in whatever state of undress or dishevelment they want without thinking about whether mom or dad might come around the corner. When you're there, they're performing. Always performing. Always on. Always the best version of themselves because you're watching. Because they love you. Because they don't want you to worry or judge or feel unwelcome. And performing for family is exhausting in a way that performing for roommates never is, because roommates eventually go away. You don't. I've watched strong marriages develop a distance that wasn't there before. Not because anyone was cruel or unkind, but because the daughter-in-law can't fully relax in her own kitchen when her mother-in-law is always there. Because your son can't be vulnerable with his wife about his fears and insecurities when his father might overhear and be disappointed. Because young love needs room to be messy and imperfect and human, and it can't be any of those things under the watchful eye of the previous generation. Think about your own marriage at their age. How much of it needed privacy to survive the hard seasons? How many nights did you and your spouse sit at the kitchen table working through problems that would have been impossible to solve if your parents were in the next room? How many moments of reconnection happened because you had the space to fall apart first and rebuild second? Your presence, no matter how well-intentioned, removes that space. And here's what nobody wants to admit. When marriages struggle under the weight of multi-generational living, who gets blamed? Not the concept, not the arrangement. You do. You become the problem that can't be named at family dinners but gets whispered about in the car on the way home. And the cruelest part is you won't even know it's happening until the damage is already done, until you sense a coldness you can't quite explain, until you realize they're relieved when you go to bed early. Truth 3. Truth 3 is subtle but devastating, and it's this. You'll become the built-in babysitter, and everyone will call it staying active, contributing, being part of the family. But it's not contribution when you can't say no. At first, helping with the grandkids feels purposeful. You're not just taking up space, you're adding value. You're contributing to the household. You're actually useful, not just another mouth to feed and person to work around. But here's what happens, and it happens in every multi-generational home I've ever seen. Could you watch them for an hour while I run to the store becomes, can you pick them up from school? Since you're home anyway becomes, we assumed you'd handle dinner because you don't work and they need to eat. And suddenly you're not the grandmother who visits and spoils them. You're the unpaid childcare provider who's available whenever needed. Because where else are you going to go? This is your home now, right? And you can't say no. Because if you're living there without paying rent, without contributing to utilities, without putting money into the household, how do you refuse without seeming ungrateful? How do you say, I raised my children already, and I'm tired, without sounding selfish? How do you admit that you wanted to spend your afternoons at the senior centre, or reading or gardening, or doing absolutely nothing, without seeming like you don't love your grandchildren? You've traded your autonomy for obligation disguised as family time. And the thing is, they don't see it as taking advantage of you. They genuinely believe they're helping you stay active, giving you purpose, keeping you involved. They think they're doing you a favor by needing you. But ask yourself honestly, when's the last time you spent a full day doing exactly what you wanted without considering anyone else's schedule or needs? When's the last time you said no to watching the kids and didn't feel guilty about it? When's the last time you made plans without checking first if they needed you? If you can't answer those questions, you're not a contributing member of the household. You're unpaid labor with a bedroom. And that's not dignity. That's not family. That's dependency dressed up as purpose, and eventually you'll feel the difference even if you can't name it. Truth 4. The fourth truth is brutal, and I wish it weren't true, but honesty matters more than comfort. When your health declines, and it will decline, it won't just affect you. It will consume their entire household and transform their lives in ways none of you are prepared for. Right now you might be healthy, active, independent. You can shower yourself, cook your own meals, drive to appointments, manage your medications. But 80 becomes 85. 85 becomes 90. And when you need more help, and you will need more help, your daughter's career takes the hit. Your son's sleep schedule breaks. Their children learn to tiptoe around your bad days and speak in whispers when you're having a hard morning. They will help you. They will care for you. And they might even do it with love and patience and all the gentleness you showed them when they were small. But underneath that love, there will be resentment they feel guilty about feeling. And you'll sense it in the slight hesitation before they help you to the bathroom at 2 a.m. for the 3rd time that week. In the exhale, they try to hide when you call for them, just as they're sitting down to dinner. In the way they stop making eye contact when discussing your medication schedule. No one should have to watch their children's faces show relief when they leave for work in the morning, grateful for 8 hours away from caregiving. That's not dignity. That's not how you want to be remembered. And here's what the healthcare industry won't tell you. Home caregiving destroys the caregiver. Studies show it, but we pretend we're different, that our family is stronger, that love conquers exhaustion. It doesn't. Your daughter will gain weight from stress eating and no time to exercise. Your son will develop high blood pressure from the constant worry and interrupted sleep. Their marriages will strain under the pressure of caregiving they never trained for and never truly chose. And you'll lie in your room listening to them argue about your care and wish you could disappear rather than be the cause of their pain. This is the future that multi-generational living creates when health fails, and health always fails eventually. Truth 5. Truth 5 is perhaps the hardest to accept. Your children are in their prime years, their peak earning years, their final window for major life changes, and your presence, no matter how well-intentioned, is pausing their life story. They can't take that job opportunity in another city because you're settled here and moving you would be too disruptive. They can't downsize to that dream apartment downtown because it doesn't have space for you. They can't travel spontaneously because who would check on you, help you with groceries, manage your appointments? They can't redesign their home to reflect their taste because they need to consider your mobility, your comfort, your needs. Every major decision they make for the next 10, 15, 20 years will be filtered through the question, but what about Mom? What about Dad? Remember when your own parents needed help? Remember that feeling of being stuck between caring for them and living your own life? Remember the opportunities you passed up because you couldn't leave them? Remember the resentment that bubbled up even though you loved them, even though you'd never abandon them, even though you'd do it all again? You hated that feeling. It made you feel guilty and trapped and like a terrible person for wanting your own life while your parents needed you. Why would you create that same feeling for your children? Why would you put them in that impossible position where they can't win, where either they sacrifice their dreams and resent you for it, or they pursue their dreams and feel guilty about it. The greatest gift our generation can give the next isn't sacrifice. It isn't making ourselves small so they can feel needed. It's permission to live fully while we're still here to see it, to cheer for it, to celebrate it. When you maintain your independence, even if it's harder, even if it requires more planning and outside help, you give your children the freedom to visit you because they want to, not because they have to. You give them permission to take that job, buy that house, travel to that place because they know you're okay. Not because you're being taken care of, but because you're taking care of yourself. That's the gift. That's what love looks like when your children are 50 and you're 80, and both of you still have life left to live. Truth 6. And here's the truth. Nobody wants to say out loud, the one that feels selfish, until you understand it fully. Maintaining your own space isn't about being stubborn or proud. It's about giving your children permission to love you without obligation, and that might be your final act of real parenting. When you live independently, whether in your own home, a senior community, or a nearby apartment, your children visit because they want to, not because they have to. They call because they miss your voice, not because they need to check if you took your medication between meetings. The relationship transforms from caretaking to companionship, from obligation to choice, from duty to genuine desire. I've seen this play out in my own family in ways that broke my heart and taught me everything. My aunt kept her apartment 3 miles from her daughter. Every Sunday they had brunch. Every Wednesday they talked on the phone. Every month they saw a movie together. When my aunt passed at 91, her daughter's grief was pure, uncomplicated by the exhaustion of caregiving or the relief that caregivers feel but never admit. Compare that to my grandmother, who moved in with us. We saw her every single day, but did we really see her? Or did we see the person who needed help with her medications, who couldn't hear the television, who shuffled slowly down the hallway? Did we call her because we missed her, or because we needed to coordinate her doctor's appointments? The relationship became transactional, measured in tasks completed and needs met, and something precious was lost that we didn't even realize was gone until she was. Living separately doesn't mean you love them less. It means you love them enough to not need them to prove their love through sacrifice. It means you understand that the best relationships, even between parents and children, require breathing room. It means you'd rather see them twice a week with joy than every day with obligation. And if you need help, you can still get it, hire it, ask for it, accept it from multiple sources instead of placing the entire burden on one household. Let your daughter help with medical appointments while a neighbour checks in daily. Let your son manage your finances while an aide helps with housekeeping. Spread the load so no one person carries the weight of keeping you alive and functional. The reveal now. Here's what this really means, and it's not what you might think. This isn't a message about rejecting your children's help or living in lonely isolation until you die alone, surrounded by cats and regret. It's about understanding that proximity and closeness aren't the same thing, and sometimes distance preserves what closeness destroys. Our grandparents had it backwards, but honestly, their world was different. They lived together because they had to, because there was no alternative, because nursing homes were nightmares, and living alone wasn't safe, and communities were built around multi-generational households. You have the privilege, and yes, it is a privilege, of choosing a relationship with your children based on love, not logistics. Today, you can live 10 minutes away and video call during breakfast. You can have your own space and share Sunday dinners. You can need help without needing to surrender your entire life. The question isn't, should I ever accept help? The question is, how do I accept help without losing myself? And sometimes, the most loving thing you can do, the thing that preserves your relationship with your children better than any amount of shared living space, is say, I appreciate the offer, but I'm not ready to stop being the parent yet. When I am, I'll tell you. That's not rejection. That's respect for what you've built together and wisdom about what it needs to survive. Your final chapter doesn't have to be lived in someone else's house, following someone else's routine, becoming someone else's responsibility. You spent 60, 70, 80 years building your autonomy. Don't surrender it because it seems easier than fighting for it. If your children are pressuring you to move in, ask them, what specific need are you trying to solve? Often it's their anxiety about your safety, not actual evidence you can't manage. Address the need, not the fear. Explore communities designed for seniors who aren't sick, just older. Look into nearby apartments. Hire help for specific tasks. Accept support without accepting dependence. The parents who stayed closest to their children were often the ones who kept their distance. That's not a contradiction. That's wisdom. If this stirred something in you, whether anger, relief, or recognition, share it with another senior who's facing this choice. Subscribe if you want more conversations we're supposed to be too polite to have. Until next time, may your home be yours, and your children be blessed by the parent who loved them enough to stay whole.